How's it going, everyone? Bert's here, playing some F1 Manager 2024. I would like to create a quick little how-to video on how to get your car set up for both of your drivers to 100%. So hopefully we'll be able to do it during this session. We'll find out here soon enough. First practice session, I personally like to go with either the hard or the medium tire. It does look like we can run the hard maybe twice. During this first practice session, I kind of look at the overall lifetime of the laps the tire can handle and split that in two. So this is roughly 50. So this first stint, let's just kind of switch the run plan to 20. With car setup, feel free to maybe move around. You can kind of see how some of these bars are already kind of leaning one way or the other. You can kind of tweak it now and get into those directions, but it's hard to tell if that's the right direction or not. So I personally just kind of most of the time like to leave it balanced here and just kind of leave everything where it's at, and then after we get that first feedback loop from the driver, then we'll be able to determine which direction we need to go, and that should do it. Let's go ahead and jump into P1. We're going to click manage session and jump into it. First things first, you want to get the cars out on the track as fast as possible to give both of the drivers as much time to give us feedback. I like to wait a bit. I don't like to send them out back to back. I like to speed this up just a little bit, wait for the first driver to get pretty much out on track, and then send out my second driver. And then from here, I'm just going to speed this up to 16 speed and wait until this little message board here reaches 5, and we'll have our first loop of feedback from the driver to see how the car is and see which direction we need to go. All right.
Everything's okay with the car.
So Danny says, so far so good. He's given us that first full loop of feedback. I've been kind of watching how many laps we've been running, and we are at only about 8% on the track, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit more. I'd like to personally get the track setup comfortability up to at least 10 or 15% before bringing them in to make a setup change. Nice. So we didn't even change anything with Oscar, and so far so good. He likes it. He likes it a lot. So nice to see. Also, I will note, by me leaving them out, the longer you leave them out on track, the more consecutive laps they can put in, the quicker this value increases and the more comfortable they get with the track at a quicker rate. And you can see here, as soon as they get into the garage, we're going to reconfigure immediately so we're not wasting any time. So you can see here, Danny, he likes the straight setting absolutely perfect right now, so we need to be very mindful of how we change the front wing angle. And with that, we also don't really want to change the rear wing angle, because that's going to significantly change the straights tab. And I can see that the traction is pretty far off, and to adjust that, I always go with the anti-roll distribution, and it's kind of it's linear in the sense that if you move it to the right, and then it moves the traction setting off to the right as well. So I think honestly, just by doing this, maybe 2 clicks off to the right, you can see the cornering tab is getting a little bit far away from its setting, as well as the oversteer, but the braking stability needs to go a little bit more. However, I think just leaving it there. Maybe if we go one more this direction, and then we move the tire camber, which is going to change our cornering, oversteer. It's going to change a lot of things, but mostly the cornering and oversteer values. That gets us a little bit closer to the great setting, a little bit closer here. I'm still a little too close, I think. Usually when it says good, you want to be a little bit farther away from the previous setting than it is now. So I'm going to take this toe out setting, and that's just going to adjust the braking stability and the cornering. I'm going to move that off to the right, maybe 2 clicks, I think. That's going to move the braking stability pretty heavily without moving the cornering that much. And we didn't even move the straights at all. So I think this is going to be a nice little change for Danny. So once we got those changes, I like to come back over here, check the tire, see how many laps we have left total. We've got 35 on that set. So I like to kind of just subtract 10 from that max number, so that way they're not out on track for any longer and risk a puncture and doing any more damage to the car. So we'll do 25 laps on that tire, and we'll go ahead and confirm that with Danny. So while that's working, we'll go ahead and switch to Oscar. And look at that. Look at that. It didn't even change anything, and we are damn close on a lot of these values. So I think what I want to do is actually use the front wing angle, because that will change everything. Let's try going to the left first. Maybe like 1 click, 2 click, oops, 1 click, 2 click. Traction. Let's just do 1 click actually. I'm just gonna go 1 off to the left. And let's check the tires here with Oscar. That was super easy. That was probably the most easiest adjustment I've ever had to make before. So that's gonna get Oscar done really quickly. So he's gonna be done first. Let's get him back out on track ASAP so he can start giving us more feedback on that change. And from here, I kind of just like to let them run the whole rest of the session. We'll probably either run out of our run plan first, or we're gonna run out of time. But I like to let them spend the rest of the session now after that first adjustment on track to give us the highest possible value for the track comfortability setting here.
Everything's pretty stable. Nice one, guys.
All right, that's the end of the first session. We did pretty okay. I'm not honestly too concerned with how where we land as far as times go. Personally, I mainly focus on getting the boys as comfortable as possible. And you can see just after that first session, we got both of our drivers up pretty significantly here. 86% here with Danny and 90% here with Oscar. And Oscar was able to get a bit more track time than Danny with that just quick and easy adjustment we did there. So he is a little bit more comfortable with the track than Danny is, but that's no big deal. So let's hit continue here. And from here, let's hit continue again. And we can make some more adjustments before getting into the next session here. And we can see we're getting much closer with some of these other tabs. I can see the cornering is still quite a ways away. If we go to, and obviously that change we made, it took us to the left with cornering, and we need to actually go off to the right here. So let's take this tire camber setting. I'm gonna go 1 click, 2 click. Let's go 1 more, 3 click. So that pushes us pretty far away, which is really good. Not too far away on the traction setting and not terribly far away with the oversteer, but it did move us way away on the, on the braking stability here. So I'm gonna move the toe out setting back to the right. 1, 2, maybe 3 clicks. And you can see it moved the braking stability exactly kind of where I wanted it without bringing the cornering back too closely. So now let's switch over to the medium tire. I can see you got about 36 laps total. So let's originally plan for about 26. And when we get that first feedback loop, I believe we'll bring him in and just kind of burn the rest of that tire up. Or just leave him out for this whole 26 and then make an adjustment later. So let's check out Oscar here. So we are spot on the straights and oversteer. This is where it gets a little tricky because what we need to adjust to change these values will change at least the oversteer value. So we just need to be very mindful of how we do this here. Let's do the tire camber to the right. 1 click. And I'm gonna leave that alone actually. I'm gonna just do 1 click off to the right because that didn't move the oversteer too much. It moved kind of everything else enough. So that's enough for me. And here we go, manage the session. And you can simulate these sessions after you make changes in between, but I find I haven't tried it really in this game, but in the previous game, I've found it to be you can't quite get the drivers to 100%. You can get them really close, but you can't quite get them to 100%. By being able to manage the sessions individually like we're doing here and being able to make another adjustment mid-session instead of just making one adjustment in between sessions, that seems to be super beneficial, and being able to get the drivers to 100% set up on the car. So that's just my advice. Managing each of the 3 practice sessions is even more important during a sprint weekend when there's only 1 practice session. So being able to manage that and make at least 2 adjustments, the original one and then one in between the session itself, then that's the way to do it. And Oscar is feeling great also.
Copy that, Oscar.
I think we're getting really close to having him dialed in at 100%. And usually it works every single time, just doing it bit by bit. But obviously conditions can change if we get a safety car or something happens out on track where we're not able to get that track time to get the setup to 100%, or we're just kind of fighting little adjustments here and there all the way through practice 3, and then we still can only get it to 98 or 99, which in my opinion, I think if we can get at least 95, that's a pretty solid result by doing it manually. I haven't tried it on this game like I mentioned, but on previous games, if you just kind of simulate and make adjustments in between each session, I feel like you can really only get to like 90. Maybe I've gotten a more than 90 once or twice, but by managing the sessions every single race weekend, you're guaranteed to get at least 90-95% every single time. So as soon as Danny gets in the garage, we're going to make another adjustment, and I'll show you what I mean by we might be able to not change tires and still make an adjustment. Ooh, look at that, 93%. So this is where it gets really tricky, because now we're just kind of fighting. So mainly as soon as you get the straights dialed in, I highly recommend never touching this rear wing angle setting ever, because that will, as you can see, I'll show it to you here fast. It moves it quite a ways without moving everything else. So I personally recommend, once you get that straights dialed in, just leave that rear wing angle alone. So this for me is going to be very tricky. So cornering, we are super close. I think, let's see, traction. And another thing, if we move the anti-roll, that moves the traction quite a ways away. We don't want to do that. If we do the front wing angle, we will adjust the straights setting, so be very careful when you're using this. As you can see here, it doesn't move it much, but the more it moves, obviously, it could be really tricky. So I'm going to leave that there. Maybe I want to use the tire camber. Let's go left, and then right with the front wing angle. Great. It's not quite enough. I don't like that. Let's try the opposite. Let's go right and then left with the front wing angle. That does move us a little bit with the oversteer, a little bit with the braking stability. It's very hard to tell, but it does move us a little bit on the traction. And it does bring us back to optimal setting on the cornering without moving too far away. Even though the straights was optimal already, as long as you don't move too far away from it, it should stay as optimal. So let's leave that change there. And you can see here, we only have 21 minutes left in the session. That's really close on being able to get another feedback loop through. We might be able to. So I think... So what I was saying earlier, if we wanted to make this setup change without sacrificing a set of tire, if we were like, 5 minutes away from the session ending, I personally wouldn't make any change and just do it mid-session, or I'm sorry, in between the sessions. But if you wanted to make a change at the end of the session without sacrificing a set of tires, mainly because as soon as I put this set of tires on, it's gonna be a used set of tires, and I will no longer have access to this set in particular. So even if I put it on and don't go out on track and don't use it, I will no longer have access to that set of tires for the whole weekend due to me quote unquote using it in practice. So be very mindful with that. If you didn't want to, you can just use this, and by obviously giving us 10 laps remaining, you can just come down here to the run plan, bring this down to below 10 laps, something like this, and then from here I can make that change, not send the car back out on track, and then there we go. But I will sacrifice one set of softs right now, because I think I want to save some mediums and the hard for the race itself actually. So I'm going to sacrifice one set of softs right now. We might have enough time left in the session for that 17 lap, but we'll see. So we'll go ahead and confirm that with Danny. Let's switch over to Oscar here. Ooh, so you can see that that changed me when we went backwards. So you can see, yeah, the tire camber is what we changed. So we were at 315. Or I'm sorry, we were at 310. That's our highest confidence. That should give us 90%. So yeah, that's actually, so if you hit revert, even though I made that, now it shows that it's 90% here. And let's see, so we went off to the right and that was the wrong direction. So let's go to the left. 90. Let's move the, it's gonna be really tricky here. Let's do that. And let's go one more on the tire camera to 3 flat. It's really hard to see because you can see our previous ones are kind of grayed out where our new ones are more white blocked. I think that is going to get us a little bit closer. So same thing with Oscar, switch over to that soft. I'll use it if we don't end up using it for the whole time, no biggie. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, any other tips that maybe I've overlooked that maybe you do in your practice sessions to dial this in a little bit better, please let me know down below. I'd love to know. Just kind of sharing this information, what I've found to be most consistent with getting the boys to that 100% level every single time. Just like to share it with you all out there. So, in my opinion, don't focus so much where your drivers are running as far as timing goes during practice, because the most important thing is to be able to get the car set up to 100%, as well as get the track comfortability to 100%. And you can see we were not successful in getting that full loop. So this is where it also gets tricky yet again. So since we were unable to complete that last loop, I'm not gonna make any changes to the setup right now. We'll just skip ahead, get into this third practice session. We'll skip ahead. I'm gonna leave everything the same as far as the setting goes. You can see here we no longer have access to that soft tire that we used. So let's do another brand new set of softs. Let's do 17 laps, 10 laps less than the tire will do. I'm not gonna make any change to that setup because you can see here it's still untested, but very quickly will we find the next set of feedback loops since we were so close previously on getting that one completed. We'll go much quicker this time. You can see Oscar's already at a 4. Danny, I think, was at a 3, but now, of course, he's at a 4. So it's literally going to take, just a few moments here, and we'll have a whole full loop. But I will, as I mentioned during the first practice session, leaving them out on track for as many consistent laps as possible helps kind of compound the rate that the track readiness increases at. So you can see Danny, still great. Not perfect, so this is gonna be tricky. Of course, when I go to make a video, we can't do it to 100%, but that's all right. Just mainly following this process really helps dial the car in, at least 90% or higher every single time. Just manually managing the sessions. I'm just gonna let this cruise on through. And when they're done with this run plan, I'll bring you back and we'll see how close we got. All right, here we go. So they're done. Run plan is done. Let's go ahead and hit reconfigure. And you can see, so that adjustment we made with Danny actually went backwards. We went to 90%, which is unfortunate. So let's see. If you hover over this, you can kind of see what the highest confidence was and what the current setting is. So obviously those changes we made weren't helpful with Danny. So let's revert this back to that 93%. And honestly, I don't think... Let's revert this back, and since we have 10 laps left on this tire, I'm going to go down to, say, 9 laps. It's not really a huge deal as long as you go underneath. I'm just going to confirm this. I'm going to revert back to that 93% setup satisfaction and leave it there. Unfortunately, I'm not quite able to get to 100%. I don't think there's quite enough time, and I don't really want to risk another set of tires to get to 100%. I personally feel super confident at this 93%. But that's really close. That's really, really close. If we were to make a change here now, go back out, obviously on a new set of tire, medium, soft, it doesn't really matter. But if we made changes now and we were unable to get a full feedback loop by the end of the session, then this driver preparation rating is going to tank very low. Mainly because he's still, unsure of the setup. So with that in mind, I'd personally rather go back to the 93% setup, maybe increase this up to like 95 or 96 potentially, and call it a day. I feel super comfortable there. As you can see with that first run plan we did, we got the track set up to 100%. So there's honestly no need to go back out on track unless you are really certain you can get that 100%. I personally not super confident and able to get that 100% without risking not getting a setup dialed in and tanking my overall preparation for the weekend, because that's going to have more of an effect than just having a 90% setup over a 93% setup, for instance. So we'll just leave that there. I'm going to hit confirm so that way it does make those changes. And let's do the same thing with Oscar. And 90%. So we're about the same with Oscar, unfortunately. And this is a bad place to be in, because to move this cornering off to the right, you can see here I need to adjust my tire camber. That's going to move this way too much, I think. If I do this, I could do this, something like that. And maybe this here. And that's possible. That's possible. So let's, why not? I'll show you. Let's just take a risk with Oscar here. 17 laps, brand new set of softs. It's all right. So now we were previously at 90, and hopefully we can. So it looks like, oh, I see. Okay, that confused me there for a second. So we did make some changes. So, hopefully that increases us. If not, then we are risking potentially the overall preparation for the weekend. But let's just send it with Oscar here. I think we need at least like 25 minutes, I feel like, just from experience of doing this for a little while myself. Putting quite a many hours into the F1 Manager series. I find that as long as we have at least 25 minutes, we should be able to get that full feedback loop. So let's just cross our fingers and hope we can, and I'll bring it back at the end. We were able to get that full feedback loop back from Oscar before session end. I'm going to leave him out a little bit longer because we did put a new underfloor on Oscar on our season series earlier this season, so he's still getting comfortable with that right at the last race. So I'm going to let him stay out on track, get a bit more comfortable with that. Oh, there we go. Actually, he's heading back to the garage. So that's it. We'll leave this at speed and come back. And let's see. I could check right now and see where Oscar's at, but I'm not. I'm going to leave it a surprise for the both of us. All right, session over. Let's hit continue here, and you can see we did increase a bit. Not a bunch, but a little bit, so better than nothing. We got Oscar to 92% set up with the car, and pretty close to the 100% set up on the car parts themselves. Got Danny set up to 93% and driver prep to 96 and driver prep to 95. So there you go. That's kind of a quick-ish how-to on, how to at least get the setup into at least 90% every single time. Just manage the session manually. Kind of be mindful of where the setup's going. I have not kind of kept track on the best setups at each track that I've found throughout the season, but maybe I will start doing that. So that might be a good option for some of you out there that maybe play the hell out of this game and pound through the seasons, going left and right. maybe you've gone 5 years in game already, I'd maybe recommend, writing down or keeping note of what some of these setups are that you come across. So that way, when you come up to that same track next season, you can switch to that setup immediately and see if it lands perfectly, or maybe just do some minor adjustments from there. So that's going to do it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hope you learned a thing or two. If there's something I missed or something that I don't know, please let me know. Let's keep the F1 community informed. That's going to do it. Drop a like, drop a comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.